Hello, if you're watching this, you probably just watched Mark McCann's video. I'm not a YouTuber, don't know what I'm doing. I've got a camera. This is my third attempt because the last two were incredibly blurry. So yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with video even. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of create a few YouTube videos and kind of see what happens. I've been kind of wanting to do this quite a while before, the Mark video happened. So yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on kind of car crime and vehicle theft and all this stuff, because I've been kind of obsessed with it since my car was nicked, and obviously this whole situation happened. I'm not going to cover that in too much detail because Mark's video does an incredible job, but I think for this first video probably a good starting point will be how it all happened, like the Mark video, and how it kind of came to be. So I was pretty quiet about the whole thing for a while for various reasons. I'm not a massively public person as it is, and I also had to kind of keep fairly tight-lipped because there were lawyers involved and garages and finance companies and police and all this stuff, so I wasn't really sure what I could and couldn't talk about publicly, so it was kind of safer to just not. But as soon as the car was back on the drive and the police kind of had reached a bit of a conclusion with the investigation, and kind of closed the case or paused the case or whatever, I was a little bit nervous about the car being back on the drive. So a part of me wanted to kind of sow the seed almost and get the kind of story out there and a bit of attention on the car more than anything else, because I was pretty paranoid and skittish about every car that drove past the house slowly. I was like, oh shit, is they scouting the place out, are they going to try and nick the car back or something? So part of me just wanted so much heat on that car that it would be silly to go near it. So I kind of, friends and family knew that my car had been stolen and all the rest of it, and people on my Instagram that's set to private, stuff like that, so fairly small circle. I don't have much of an online presence. So yeah, when it was back on the drive, I thought, right, I'll sort of go public with it and kind of get a bit of heat on the car, and I sort of imagined it would end up in the local news maybe, because I don't think at the time I appreciated just how ridiculous the whole situation was, or the whole story, and I didn't know how uncommon it is, or for this to happen. So yeah, I put it on Instagram, and then I used to work with for a few sort of big media companies, and I've still got friends and ex-colleagues and stuff that are on my Instagram that I thought maybe they'll pick it up, maybe it'll end up on Lad Bible or something, and within 2 hours it was on Lad Bible, and I thought, shit, that's pretty big, that's pretty serious. But then, after that, I did not envision it going as far and wide as it did. Within like a day, I was lined up to do BBC 5 Live interviews, BBC West Midlands, a show in a breakfast show in Dublin, radio show in Australia. I thought they were going to absolutely rinse me, but they sort of did. But they were quite nice actually. So that went better than I thought it was going to. So yeah, it just went mental basically, and we were on like a bit of a family outing to Northumberland, me and my partner and her brother and his partner. He had some like cycling event thing up there, so yeah, we went for moral support. And when we were driving there was when it was really kind of blowing up. We had to stop at Tamworth services so I could do BBC Radio West Midlands, and my partner was driving, and she was fuming because I was supposed to be giving her directions, but I was like on the phone to the son or someone like that. So yeah, it was a contentious and very long drive, and she was already sick of the whole situation, because she didn't really want me to get that car in the first place, because it wasn't really a sensible car to be buying. It was a bit silly, but so that car was already pretty contentious. So after this, she was not happy with the whole situation. I don't blame her. It caused a lot of stress and anxiety. But yeah, so there I am, kind of walking around Hadrian's Wall, supposed to be taking in the beautiful historic scenes, and the whole time I'm on my phone, getting phone calls, responding to emails and messages, and everyone was a bit pissed off with me, I think, because it was pretty rude. But so this video I'm talking about how the Mark McCann video came about specifically, because I think it's interesting, and I'm going to talk a bit about that video in general, because I think it was amazing. It was fantastic, the whole process. So Mark came up in my DMs, and the name sounded familiar, but sort of by that point I was being pleaded with to, you've done enough radio and interviews and stuff now, like well done, you planned to put heat on the cars, worked, great, just leave it there please. But the name Mark McCann sounded familiar. I don't watch loads of car YouTube stuff, like I watch it very sporadically, but we got back to the Airbnb and everyone was going out for like a walk or something, and I was like, I'm feeling a bit tired, I think I'll stay here, but the real reason for that is because I wanted to check out Mark's channel, because at this point I'd kind of said, I'm not going to do it anymore. When I went on Mark's channel, I could see that I'd already watched loads and loads and loads of his videos, and then it occurred to me, it twigged at that point, that I'd watched like all of his car theft videos. I'd basically been on a massive YouTube rabbit hole about like car crime, car cloning, chop shops, all the rest of it. And so obviously Mark's videos on those subjects are absolutely fantastic, like the best videos that I came across on the subject. And I'm not just saying that because he's like he's helped me out as much as he has, but they were really good videos and fascinating, like the one where he's actually interviewing a car thief, blew my mind. So at that point I was like, I've got to do this one. There's the one last bit of media stuff I'm doing, I'm gonna do this. And I didn't really know what the plan was. I thought I was just gonna have a chat with them, do a bit of an interview, and it's worth pointing out as well at this point, the insurance had basically said they were fully aware of the situation, which took hours of sort of phone calls and explaining, because it sounds pretty iffy to an insurance company on the surface. So I'd sent them all the evidence, all the proof, whatever. So but they weren't going to cover the cost of repairs to put the car back right again because it was too risky, whatever. So when I spoke to the Honda garage, they kind of said, we can put it back, but it's going to be like £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 or something like that. So we were still kind of facing the prospect that this car would not end up back in my possession. The insurance company basically said, it will be cleaner if you just give us the car, we pay out the money, job done, sort of thing. Which I really didn't want to do, because after all that, and it was back on my drive, I was sort of desperate for this to have a happy ending. And Mark's videos, tend to have end on a happy ending. Not like that. So I thought it could be worth having this conversation. If nothing else, it'd be interesting. And to kind of, in terms of like raising awareness, I wasn't really expecting the video to go the way it did, where they actually helped restore this car, because I wasn't sure how feasible it even was, to be honest. But a problem I had, a lot of the press coverage made me look like an absolute div, and some of that's fair. Got to hold my hands up there. Like, I definitely made a few mistakes, but I saw loads of comments and things, people saying, oh, didn't you check the VIN number and all the rest of it. So I kind of wanted to correct that side of the story a bit with someone that was more sympathetic, and that's what happened. So I met up with Mark and Reese, and yeah, they were brilliant. They made me feel less of a div, because they were like, well, these cars end up in main dealerships and all sorts. Like, they do such a crazy job of cloning these vehicles that if it wasn't my vehicle, if anyone else bought it, probably would never have known. So I kind of wanted to get that out there a bit, because the New York Post called me like a sad sap or something, and so a lot of the newspapers were not being particularly kind. So yeah, wanted to correct the story just a little bit in my defence. But yeah, they made me feel really kind of at ease about the situation in terms of that, and they were really kind of understanding and didn't kind of judge me for any of it. They got it totally, basically. So yeah, we there's been a lot of back and forth, and a lot of work done for this video. I obviously did a bit of filming with them, but it was nothing compared to all this to all the work they've had to kind of do and organise. And yeah, it took quite a while, and the results were definitely worth it, because it is an incredible video, and yeah, super happy with how it's turned out. And they're all super impressive. What Mark's done, the community he's created is incredible, and Reese as well. That guy, young lad. Working with him, you can kind of see the vision he's got in mind throughout the video, and it's really impressive, like the work he does. So yeah, I couldn't be more impressed basically than what they've got going on. So yeah, what next in terms of me sat in this little room with the camera? Because I got pretty obsessed with car crime, I've now got a lot of thoughts and opinions on the topic, and I want to raise awareness, and what I also want to do is, I'm a software engineer by trade, so I kind of want to build a platform, but also a bit of a community. The platform I want to build is, I want to use like AI and big data and all this stuff to kind of... I've already started this process, I've already built something, but you know, it needs a bit of kind of community around it. So ultimately I want to try and use technology to kind of build a bigger picture of the problem. And it is a massive problem. You know, the government will come out and say, well, with statistics, X amount reduction and this, that and the other, but I don't feel like people feel safer at the minute. I don't feel like people feel like their cars and their property are safe. It feels like the problem is getting worse, and quite often with government statistics, there's a disconnect between the statistic and what's actually happening on the ground. You know, statistics can be kind of put across in a certain way, or kind of not manipulated. I'm not accusing the government of doing like North Korean style job statistics and things, but yeah, I feel like there's a disconnect, because what I can see, and you know, I'm in all these stolen car groups and things on loads of different social media platforms, and it just seems to be getting worse. And I've got a database of cars that have been nicked in the area that I'm, you know, I just keep a log of everything I see online, and you know, I've only been doing this a few months, and I'm at 200 plus, and that's just the people that have gone on Facebook and Instagram and shared it. You know, plenty of people, the majority in fact of people probably aren't doing that. So the real statistic about how many cars have been nicked in just the West Midlands is probably staggering. And I got that impression from the police. And I don't want to throw the police under the bus, because I don't necessarily blame them. There's a lot of frustration with the police on this issue, but you know, I get the sense that they're doing what they can with the tools they have. You know, if there's like 5 serious assaults and a shooting, and then there's 100 cars nicked, they're not going to be looking at all of these stolen cars. It's not going to happen. You know, the public services in this country are chronically underfunded, and this is for the government to kind of sort this out. So I do kind of want to build a community that kind of helps each other out and raises awareness, helps people protect their vehicles, but also maybe eventually can kind of become a bit of a pressure group on the government, and industry as well, because when you buy a car and it's got these security keyless features or whatever, you expect it to work. You don't expect some kids with a giant coat hanger to be able to to bypass these security features on expensive cars. And that was part of my naivety, was I read about, Range Rovers have got a problem with this or whatever, certain models of Fiat, I don't know, whatever. But what I didn't realise was that the problem is much bigger than that and much more widespread. Because I hadn't seen many Type R's getting nicked, I sort of just assumed that my car was probably fine, it didn't have this problem. But to realise that it's basically any car with keyless features, which is virtually every single new car on the market for the past 10 or so years, and combine that with the fact that the police don't have the funding to go and investigate all of this, we are at a point now where it's almost pointless owning a nice car. That's kind of where we're getting to. Because you're going to be constantly looking over your shoulder, or you've got to spend thousands getting aftermarket security to fix the problem that the car manufacturers have left us with. So, the government aren't particularly seem to be doing much about this. The industry are still making keyless cars with the same problems. The police are still not getting adequate funding, time or resources to look into this. So I think, really vehicle owners and us essentially have got to do something to try to change the situation, because I don't see where else this is coming from, where else this is assistance and help's coming from at the minute. So yeah, I kind of want to do a bunch of videos around this and try to kind of build something and see where we go from there. And if nothing comes of it, and then that's fine, you know, I gave it a go. I'm probably still going to work on things in the background and because it's become like a bit of an obsession, but yeah, I don't know, we'll see where it goes. What am I supposed to say now? Like and subscribe, all that shite, whatever. Thanks, bye.